Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Mark David Butler, and today we're diving into a fascinating piece of environmental history, which was called acid rain. If you grew up in the 70s or 80s, you probably heard about it in the news. Acid rain was a big deal. But what exactly was it? Where did it come from? And why don't we hear about it much anymore? Well, pull up a seat because we're about to unpack this environmental mystery, step by step. Let's start with what acid rain actually is. Let's start with the basics. What is it? Well, it's not your typical rain shower. Acid rain is any precipitation, rain, snow, or fog that's more acidic than normal. Regular rain has a pH of about 5.6, slightly acidic because of natural carbon dioxide in the air, but acid rain, it could drop to a pH of 4 or even lower. Think about lemon juice territory. That extra acidity comes from pollutants, mainly sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides, mixing with water in the atmosphere. These gases were mostly released by human activities, like burning coal in power plants, running factories, and driving cars without emission controls. Back in the 20th century, especially the 60s through the 80s, these sources were pumping out massive amounts of these gases. They'd rise into the air, react with water vapor, and form sulfuric acid and nitric acids. So what was the result? Acid rain falling across places like North America, Europe, and even parts of Asia. But this wasn't just a quirky weather phenomenon. It was a serious environmental problem. So what kind of damage did acid rain cause? Picture it as an environmental wrecking ball. It hit ecosystems very hard. In places like the Adirondack Mountains in New York or the Black Forest in Germany, entire lakes turned so acidic that fish and other aquatic life just could not survive. We're talking about crystal clear lakes with no life. Pretty eerie, right? Forests took a beating too. Acid rain stripped nutrients from the soil, making it tough for trees to grow. And in some areas, whole forests started dying off, leaving behind skeletal trees. But it wasn't just nature. Acid rain ate away at buildings and statues, especially those that are made of limestone or marble. Think of historic cathedrals in Europe, with their intricate carvings just melting away. I mean, imagine a 500-year-old statue looking like it got hit with a chemical peel. It also affected human health. The same pollutants causing acid rain contributed to air quality issues, triggering things like asthma and respiratory problems. Believe me, that's true. I had asthma as a child, directly related to it. Farmers were not spared either. Acidic soil made it so hard to grow crops. It hit agriculture in very affected regions very hard. It was a global wake-up call. So, how did we tackle this environmental crisis? Well, people didn't just sit back and let it happen. Scientists, policymakers, and activists got to work in the 1970s. Researchers started sounding the alarm after noticing dying lakes and forests. By the 80s and early 90s, government stepped up. In the U.S., the Clean Air Act of 1990 was a game changer. It set strict limits on sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide emissions. Power plants had to install scrubbers. Think of those as giant air filters that capture those harmful gases before they can escape. Cleaner fuels and better car emission standards also helped. The results were incredible. By the early 2000s, sulfur dioxide emissions in the U.S. had dropped over 50%, and nitrogen oxides were not far behind. In Europe, international agreements like the Gothenburg Protocol brought countries together to tackle the problem. Lakes and forests slowly started recovering. Fish returned to some lakes, and forests began regrowing. Acid rain went from front page news to a success story in environmental action. So, is acid rain gone for good? Not quite. In places like the US and Europe, stricter laws, cleaner technologies, and renewable energy have made acid rain much less common. It's no longer the crisis it was in the 80s, but it's still a problem in parts of the world with heavy industry and fewer regulations, like China. Like some regions in Asia or developing nations, for example, countries with lots of coal plants still face acid rain issues because they're releasing the same old pollutants. So what's the good news? The fight against acid rain showed us that we can solve big environmental problems with science and cooperation. But it's also a reminder that we can't get complacent. Climate change, air pollution, those are today's challenges, and they need the same kind of global effort. Plus, we're still learning from acid rain. Scientists are studying how ecosystems recover and what long-term effects linger, like changes in soil chemistry. Well, what a journey, right? Acid rain went from being a major environmental villain to a problem we've largely tamed in many parts of the world. It's proof that when we combine science, policy, and a bit of grit, we can make a real difference. Well, thanks for joining me on this dive into environmental history here on my channel. If you enjoyed this, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments what science topic you want to explore next. Maybe climate change or the ozone layer. You tell me. See you next time.